And thank you for joining us here again on PM Express. This is the evening after the evening of the launch of the NDC Manifesto. There's a lot of talk already about the manifesto. You know, PM Express, we have a dedicated day for discussing issues relating to the party manifesto, which is Wednesday, where we do the manifesto track on PM Express. And so tonight we're going to do something slightly different because tomorrow we have a dedicated show for this. We're going to have the NDC Manifesto chairman join us for a one-on-one conversation that will interrogate the issues properly on the back of our own analysis, which we always do on Wednesday on the manifestos. But today we're going to do something slightly different. What you heard yesterday was the content of the manifesto, but don't forget that this is politics in its truest sense. What does the NPP really want to do with the manifesto? You guessed right. They want to win the elections. It really as simple as that. All the promises you had is just geared towards that. But I submit to you that the manifesto is part of a bigger plan to win the elections. And one of the key issues that we're going to be addressing today is why it appears from our end that the NDC is zeroing in on paying a bit more attention to Greater Accra. And it's the politics behind it. In fact, if you look at the manifesto, which we've begun to analyze, Greater Accra has 20 mentions in the entire document. 20 mentions. It is the region with the most mention in the NDC manifesto. The second region is Ashanti. In fact, Kumasi, look for the word Kumasi in the NDC manifesto. You find it's only 19. Look for Accra, you find 20. No other region comes close, these two regions. But the 20, which is the most mentions in the manifesto, begins to tell you a certain story. But that is not the only thing we are looking at. Look at the NDC in the last few months. They have outdoored their running mate in the Greater Accra region. They outdoored their manifesto, Greater Accra region. They have a campaign chairman who is a true guy, who everybody knows is really robs off people in the Greater Accra region. So what is happening here? Is this coincidence that all these big events for the NDC is happening in the Greater Accra region? I submit it's not. I submit there's a bigger plan behind it. And that is why tonight, before we go into the manifesto conversation, I don't intend to go deeply into the manifesto today. Tomorrow we'll do that. But tonight I want to do a bit of the politics, a bit of the form really behind what we saw yesterday. Just a slight take on what is happening with the NDC, Greater Accra and the manifesto. So call it the NDC manifesto and the Greater Accra factor. Let's start by looking at why the NDC is best served in placing a lot of its eggs in Greater Accra. Are they right to be putting a lot of the charm offensive in Greater Accra? And I might submit also that you possibly might see that John Mahama might end his campaign possibly in Greater Accra. I'm just guessing, probably predicting. Let's see why that happens, or if that happens. But this is a story of Greater Accra and why the NDC, if is this true part of a strategy to be focusing on Greater Accra, it's indeed the right place to be focusing. This is the EC's own statistics when it comes to voter numbers, registered voters, comparing it to what we have in 2016 and what we have currently. And that begins to tell you that Greater Accra this year, more than any other election year, is going to be such a big decider. You've heard the proverbial swing regions, but even among the swing regions, there is penny to penny among the swing regions. I submit that. Let's look at the numbers. Greater Accra, from the EC's numbers, this is from the EC's own data. After the registration, they have 35 million registered voters currently. In 2016, when the NDC lost the elections, the total number of registered voters was just 3 million. Now, the EC tells us that there currently in Greater Accra, we have new voters of 445,815. That is almost 500,000 voters have come to add on to the already huge numbers in Greater Accra. But look at the percentage voter gained for Greater Accra. EC says this number here is where I want you to focus on. 35% voters gained from 2016 to 2020. Huge. No other region has gained as many new voters as the Greater Accra. In fact, the closest is the central region, which comes in, this is the northern region, which comes at 16%. But if you look at the numbers, it's pretty small. Central region has huge numbers also, but only 12% gained so far. Central region is under swing region, by the way. But if you look at the share numbers of new voters look at the central region, just 160. So again, among the swing regions, Greater Accra has no comparison. Previously, before now, when we had 10 regions, you counted 4 swing regions. You counted Central, you counted Greater Accra, you counted Bono, and then you counted Western. I submit that this year, these 2 other swing regions, Bono and Western, have been diluted because they've been separated. So if you look at it, it's not in its original swing form, and we're still going to wait to see how it pans out in elections. But Greater Accra and Central, stable. And that is why, guess what the NPP has done? They took theirs to Central region, made a big splash about it. There, Greater Accra is NDC's focus, it appears to us, and they are right to do so, because even if you compare Central to Greater Accra still trumps it. Almost 500,000 people more to vote on the register. In pure numbers, 3 million. Compared to Central region, 1.5 million. You can't compare the two. Get Greater Accra, you've won the elections. At least that is what the history tells us. Let's even get a further evidence to back this particular point as we explain further. You see, this here is estimated population 2020. Greater Accra has a population of 5 million as of right now, 2020. Look at the voter percentage, the share of the population in Greater Accra, which is what? 69%. So if you look at the population in Greater Accra and the number of people who are registered to vote in Greater Accra, 69%. Again, no region comes close when it comes to the population as against number of people in the population registered to vote. The one that comes close is Central region. Just 60% of the Central region population of 2.6 are registered to vote. Again, that tells you, if you focus on Greater Accra, focus on this number here, 69% is what I want to focus on. That tells you that Greater Accra, again, just the sheer number of people registered within the bigger population to vote, significant in comparison to anybody else. And so, pitch your camp in Greater Accra, you are on your way to greater things. That's one of the things I need to notice here. Now, another thing I want you to notice, this graph is interesting. And just by visually looking at it, since 2004, regional representation of voter register, look at how high it's been. I want you to compare to Ashanti region. Ashanti region has never come close when it comes to Greater Accra in terms of just the voter people registered there. And Ashanti region turn out to vote in quite significant numbers. Greater Accra, it's in very close place just behind in terms of the turnout. But if you look at the sheer number of people who registered to vote compared to Ashanti region, which is the stronghold of the NDC, MPP, Greater Accra is consistently since 2004 beating Ashanti region. Again, if you focus there, Ashanti, not necessarily a place where you could say if you win it, you win the election, because it's a stronghold. Greater Accra, you win it, you win elections. But even more so this year, as the numbers tell us. Also, another key thing to watch is voter turnout since 1992, and this is important. So the mere fact that you have 3.5 million registered voters doesn't necessarily mean that all of them will turn out, right? But if you look at the history of turnouts, Ashanti region is pretty high up there, 59%, 1992, 79%, 88% 2004, and look at 2016 when the NPP won, very high, 85%. Greater Accra is not too far off. After every 3 elections, they go up quite significantly. The incumbent retains the elections. If you speak to some statisticians, they say, well, they're expecting that this year, the Greater Accra numbers will go up. And in fact, we've spoken to some of the actuarial scientists, and they are estimating that if you do the estimated expected voter numbers for 2020 going forward, Greater Accra is going to be as high as 40% this year, right? And in raw numbers, we are going to have 2.4 million people of the 3.5 that we talked about earlier who are registered to vote, turning out to actually vote. And compare this number to any of the other regions, and nobody else comes close. Ashanti region is 2.3. still behind Greater Accra when the statistical scientists make the projections. In terms of actual turnout, they're anticipating and predicting that Greater Accra will have the larger share of people actually turning out to vote. And so, again, I don't know if I have not been told this for any particular emphatically, but if you are strategically positioning your camp and trying to hammer a particular region, the strategists in NDC will tell you, JM, let's see if we can get to Greater Accra, because these numbers, I'm pretty sure they've seen the projections. Greater Accra is the way to go. Now I'm beginning to appreciate why Joshua Alabi was a campaign chairman when he was appointed. People were questioning, Joshua Alabi, this is a guy who tried to contest you. But he's gone. He rubs up well with the people of this particular region. As we say, get them on board, you're winning the elections. As the other swing says. And don't forget the point I keep on repeating. It's been swinging since 1992, but this year even more so because of the huge numbers that have been added onto it. Voter numbers in swing regions. Again, if it's central region, Accra, compare again, tells you a story. Beating everybody else in terms of what we expect to see this year. This is just a swing story. The swing story we show you in this graph. Every year, whoever wins Greater Accra wins the elections. This one, without saying, the graph just tells you the story. But this year is more significant than most years. We got my friend from Political GH to dig into this for us, Isaac Nyamiche. And he came up with, even in Greater Accra, there are some constituencies you need to focus on better than others, right? Yes, focus on the region, but focus on some constituencies. They are more important because of their swing dynamics. Those regions, those constituencies in Greater Accra, you win, they give you a sense of what is going to happen in the actual elections when it comes to the region. One of them is Adenta. And Adenta is interesting. First created in 2004, created under John Kufuor, but they didn't win it then. Then Professor Mills won it. Look at how close it was, 166 difference. But when it came to 2008, both in the first and second rounds, they gave it again to NDC, and NDC won the actual elections eventually. 2012, what happens? They kept their promise to the NDC. NDC wins the national elections. If you go to 2016, what happened? They're pretty fickle, changed their minds, gave it to NPP. What happens? NPP wins the national elections. But look at the closeness of the vote. This is just 2,400. This is something you can overturn in this year's elections. So again, if you're focused on Adenta, can you get back? Can you overturn this from 2,400? Can you move it back to 5,000 possibly, which you had in 2012? I say that's very possible. And again, it's one of the places that they are focusing. And if you look at the candidate there, is a candidate who has been there for 2 elections at least, running for them, and has a bit of, he's learned the lessons, and he can pull a bit of punches when it comes to his experience in that particular enclave. They've kept him consistently there. Why? Possibly because of this. Ledukuku is such an interesting place. I say swing, but something happened in 2016. They voted for NDC in the presidential elections. NDC lost the elections, presidential elections, but parliamentary, they gave it to Mr. Okoboy, Dr. Okoboy. So they did skirt and blouse. That tells you that this is interesting place to watch. But look at the margin of victory for Nanado, 450. All NDC needs to do is to make a dent into this. I mean, the number of people in Joy FM is far more than 450, right? I mean, just give you a sense of the work they had to do to overturn this. And it's always swung since 1992. That tells you, even Greater Accra, win Ledukuku, history says you win the elections. And this is how close they have to just overturn the numbers. So absolutely important to look at Ledukuku for the NDC. And I say Ledukuku is a place that NDC must put a lot of focus on because of these important numbers. Medina, also created in 2004 from the Ganoff constituency, first created, was won by NDC. Yeah, but they didn't win the overall elections. But come to 2008, they stayed with NDC, NDC wins. 2012, they stayed, NDC wins. 2016, they switched, NPP won. But again, another trend is emerging. In these swing constituencies in the Greater Accra, in 2016, when NPP won it, they won it by a few hundred votes, which is key, right? I've told you the Dukuku story. This is Medina, the Medina story. Also same, just 870. Overturn it, swing constituency, almost there in terms of winning. Another constituency that NDC might be focusing on, apart from the region itself, Botswana English and Manfro, came into play 2012, first time. Who won it? NDC won it. Created under John JM, that period when, of course, Mills's unfortunate demise, JM took over towards the end of the year, just before the elections. NDC won it. MPP won it again in 2016 and won the national elections, but at a quite handsome margin of 3,000. But again, it's not impossible to overturn that. And that swing region I submit NDC will be looking at is Amasaman. Also first created in 2012. 2012 created 34, but goodness me, just look at this closeness here. In 2012, it was close. And this is the case I was making with the small margins. The MPP has been winning the 2016 swing constituencies in Greater Accra by, and how it's so risky year on year, election to election. 2012, NDC wins the swing constituency by 239 votes. They won the elections, right? But in 2016, MPP worked hard, simply overturned this easily, and got almost 4,000 votes. What happened? NDC still wins it, loses the elections. Now, I'm not going to say this particular area here. It's one of those areas where NDC could look at and say, can we overturn this? This is something that will overturn, because we were just winning this at 2-3-2. The thing about these constituencies is that sometimes they swing together with the tsunami, right? When there's a tsunami happening, we saw that in 2000, we saw that in 2016, a lot changes in the game. Krowo, another key place to watch also because of his swing dynamics there. Let's wrap up with Kloli. This is the place I grew up. I know this place very well. This is at Dabraka, Osu, and those areas. It's very cosmopolitan, a place where you have a lot of middle-class people, and they've been swinging quite frequently. In 2016, see what happens here. MPP won it. They won the election in 2012. Same happens. NDC won it. They stayed. They won the elections. But the votes in which the vote they used to win it, it's pretty significant there. But it's again not impossible to overturn this and win the elections, because that's what the history says. Now that this is for me one of the key things to watch. The difference between these two is simply 116,000. It's 116,000 votes. The figure here you see here is the total number of new voters on the register, right? The difference here is 116,000 voters that you need to get on your side. But you have this huge number of people that you can play with and overturn this in the 2016 elections this year. And that is why if you look at this number, we let this number stand alone, because new registered voters. And Jane said something yesterday, that's the running mate. She made a point that this year we're going to have a huge population of young voters. In Greater Accra, even more so. A lot of them are here. Have you seen the strategy of NDC? Jane has been targeting the youth. Why? Because they see a lot of them playing in this particular number here. Those who have joined, the first-time voters, those who have never registered before, a huge chunk is sitting in this number here. NDC is going for them in Greater Accra because they believe you win it, you win the elections. How is this related to the manifesto? I submit to you is the reason why Accra is mentioned more times in the manifesto than any other region. 20 mentions compared to all the other regions. None of that region gets a close anything close to that, apart from Ashanti region, by the way. But Ashanti region is also interesting. We'll do another show where we analyze Ashanti region. Why the NDC seems to be focusing a bit more on Ashanti region. But Greater Accra, again, the numbers tell a story. I have with me Felix Kwachifosu. He himself is a member of party. Well, he's a candidate. And I made a slip there, but I'm sure he's pretty happy with that slip, because he probably will say, goodness me, I've probably seen something in the spirit going into the 2020 elections. But he himself is from the central region. Another place the MPP is trying to get on its side. And I need to ask him the question about, is this what appears to us to be a focus on Greater Accra a deliberate strategy or simply a case of coincidence? Is it that the NDC hasn't got money to travel outside and do their main events in maybe Volta, Kumasi, or elsewhere, and Accra is simple, it doesn't cost much, or there's a strategy behind it? Felix, what do you say?
Well, good evening to you and good evening to our viewers. Let me indicate that I've observed your analysis. I must say that there's a lot of speculation and guessing, which is allowed. I mean, prognostication around elections is not unusual. It's okay. But the point must also be made that as a political party, we take every region seriously. And so we put in an appreciable amount of work in order to garner votes. Of course, we have people who crunch the numbers for us. There are people who sit around the table to strategize on what we need to do. For obvious reasons, I'm unable to divulge any specific strategy that we are deploying. But I can assure you that we've taken note of all the factors that should be at play in order to guarantee us victory. And we are fairly confident that on the basis of what we are doing and what we've done so far and what is yet to come, we are going to secure more votes than the new Patriotic Party so that we can take over the reins of government. Regarding the choice of Accra for the launch of the manifesto, a number of factors come together to inform the choice of venue for any particular program. The manifesto is an extremely important milestone in the process towards the elections. And it is not unusual to have a lot of excitement built around it. There's some expectation that builds around it. And in this year in particular, there's been a lot of speculation. People demanded that the manifesto be launched. The MPP were at it, attempting to poke fun at us and all that. But we stood our ground. We were clear on what we were doing. We wanted to choose quality over speed in order to ensure that the final product that we produced for the people of Ghana met their expectation. And I'm sure that based on what has transpired today, the analysis that has been done, traditional social media, the views, the commentaries, the analysis that has gone on so far, it is quite clear that this is a manifesto that sits well with significant sections
of the Ghanaian public. You say.
As for the choice of Greater Accra,
I think that's coincidence.
Oh no, let me indicate that we take Greater Accra very seriously. Of course, it is trite knowledge that in order to do well in elections and win it, you need to win Greater Accra. Now, this year in particular, because of the huge numbers in the region, and the fact that the region has become by far and away the most populous in terms of the voter population, any political party that does not take that region serious is committing suicide. So yes, we in the NDC are taking the region very seriously. I'm sure the MPP is doing the same. But in terms of what informed our choice to use the UPSA venue, you must factor in the restrictions that COVID imposes on us. If you travel outside Greater Accra to hold an event, there are a number of things that should come to play. You need to have a sizable number of party functionaries moving out of the capital to where the event is taking place. Now, in view of the restrictions on numbers, it is no longer practical because very few people can move. You are going to have to give opportunity to locals to be present at the event. So you factor that in and see which is the most effective. Yes, well, different considerations may have informed why they took.
But that's our curiosity because Jane was here. Manifesto launched 2 big events for every party. They have a campaign chairman who is gone. We're just curious.
No,
there must be something more up there than just simply.
The point I'm making is that we need to factor in all the issues.
All the other issues.
If it is convenient to do it in Accra, if you have a venue that is suited for the occasion and makes it possible for you to have an event that is incident-free, that works like clockwork and all that, then you go for it. Irrespective of where you hold the event, I believe that is a content that matters. And yesterday, everybody would bear witness that it was a very spectacular event. It went very well. There were a few to no hitches. And today, the discussions have been about the content of the manifesto. Form is great, but I think substance trumps everything. With respect to Professor Alabi, first and foremost, the NDC has a vast array of talent. And therefore, anybody who is tapped to fill a particular role is tapped on the basis of their ability, proven competence. So first and foremost, Professor Alabi was chosen because of his competence. And on the evidence of what has transpired so far in our campaign, nobody can dispute the fact that he's doing a wonderful job. in conjunction with his colleagues on the campaign team. The fact that he is gone may be helpful in the sense that
helpful.
No, in assembling the team of competent people, you also need to be mindful of the need for balance, regional balance, ethnic balance, gender balance, and what have you. Because these things, some way, somehow, are important in our politics. The last thing you want to do is to show that you favor a particular group of people, a particular demographic over another. So whereas competence is the underlying factor, anybody who gets onto that team must meet the basic requirements of proven ability. Beyond that, you also look at what they bring to the table in terms of experience, in terms of appeal, and what have you. But of course, the balance that you need to strike in terms of region, gender, ethnicity, religion, what have you, all of those are important. Even in putting up a ticket for the presidency, the running mate, the presidential candidate and the running mate, you need to factor all of these.
All those considerations.
It is not.
But it helps your cause.
But of course it does. What it does is that it shows that we are a diverse party, and to the extent that we have made it possible that for the first time in the history of Ghana, a woman stands a realistic chance of becoming vice president. We have proven beyond doubt that we have basically shattered every barrier there is to inclusion in our politics. And the last one, the last remaining one was gender. We have broken that ceiling now because we are the first major political party to have a woman higher.
Even with the choice of Jane, we'll come back to the manifesto shortly, but even the choice of Jane, I see her doing a lot of campaigns, but targeting first women, but generally the youth. And yesterday she said it in her speech, putting out the statistics about how this year, more than any election year, the huge number of people, significant proportion of the percentage going to vote will be young people. Is that why we've seen her do this deliberately, campaigning and going to young, youthful people, campaigning, while GM does a general one? This is
well, GM himself has pretty much focused on the youth as well. Indeed, you recall that in his interview from Ho about 3 weeks ago, when he first announced the big push, he made a point that the primary reason for his return to throw his hat in the ring in the presidential contest is to represent the youth and ensure that the needs, the hopes and aspirations of the youth are met. That is why he put forward the agenda 1 million jobs, because essentially our population is youthful. Available statistics show that about 60% or so of our population, and by inference our voter population, is youthful. So any party that is serious about governing must factor in the needs of this large demographic. Therefore, in couching your message, you need to convince this section that there is something in it for them. So to the extent that it is possible, whenever our leading functionaries have the platform, they are going to articulate what specific proposals we have for the youth. So yes, our running mates who cuts across various segments of society, she has broad appeal amongst the Ghanaian populace. Use the opportunity of the manifesto launch yesterday to pitch at the youth and tell them exactly what it is that we have for them. It does not mean that she's the only person who is going to go around speaking to the youth. JM has pretty much done that. And as the arrowhead of the campaign, he will not miss any opportunity to demonstrate to the Ghanaian youth that he is on their side and he is a president who will work in their interest.
I mean, come back to this Greater Accra thing in the manifesto. Sure. In analyzing the manifesto, and tomorrow we'll do a pretty fair breakdown of this. We found that Greater Accra has, the word Accra, has the most mention in the manifesto. I mean, you see Kumasi also mentioned in 19 times. Accra has 20 mentions in there. Doesn't it fit into the pattern?
Well, first of all, you need to examine the context within which those regions are mentioned. In what breadth are they mentioned? It is only natural that, given that Accra is the administrative and economic powerhouse of the country, a lot of the things that are going to be done by any government would necessarily have its roots or their roots or foundation in Accra. Accra will be the springboard from which these things happen. So it is only natural that it will get mentioned. Kumasi is also an economic giant in its own right. So it makes sense that in formulating policy, a lot of things are going to run through.
But I submit to you, there's more political...
No, there was... I can assure you that first of all, there was no effort to discriminate in terms of giving prominence to one region or the other. It is the natural course of events that because of the strategic roles of Accra, Kumasi, and a few other places.
Because the strategic roles of Accra to your chances of winning elections.
No, in terms of administrative and economic importance.
You're being politically correct.
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. That's why I said it's important.
I mean, the data shows.
First of all, again, it is not helpful. No party will survive if it becomes apparent that they are tailoring policies to favor one particular region purely on the basis of votes. I'm
just talking
because governments have a duty.
Every country has, US has battlegrounds.
Sure.
We have swing constituencies, swing regions. Sure. You absolutely must necessarily focus more in these areas than others.
Elections are about people. So when parties form government and they are taking decisions or they are formulating policy proposals, they are thinking of lives first and foremost. So if there is a certain number of people living in the Greater Accra region and you must formulate policy to touch their lives, a lot will come to play. So Accra, administratively, is the leading region. Economically, it is the leading region.
Followed by Ashanti region.
Absolutely, and other regions in that order. So it is only natural that when formulating policy and doing some of these things, Accra will get significant mention. But it is not because we are making a pitch for votes in Greater Accra, simply because of the numbers involved. It is simply the case that that is what has to happen in order for the sort of development, the sort of progress that we require as a nation to happen. When you go to Kumasi and you observe the economic might of that region, nobody will tell you as a government to do what is necessary to ensure that the potential of that region is tapped. In doing so, it will get significant mention. And I'm sure that if you follow in that order, you will find that in order of economic or administrative importance or political importance, some regions get mentioned. There are some regions that may be mentioned less, not because they are not politically important in terms of votes, but because of the role that they play. And that role may be just as important, even though it may look small, in the larger scheme of things as the other large. So we don't set out to give one particular region excessive prominence.
So there's no strategy, there's no political strategy behind this.
After that, we have strategies. We have.
You will not disclose it.
I cannot disclose it, but it is important that we make the point that when we go and sit around the table to plan our path towards the elections, we don't discriminate against regions. We don't set out to put in policies simply because one particular region votes for us more than the other. Let me give you an example. We took a lot of flack from sections of society for putting the KJT market in place. There were those who said that we don't do too well in the Ashanti region in terms of food, so why go put an investment there? But the consideration that went into it was economic and developmental in scope, because that region is huge, and that is the sort of infrastructure they need to boost the local economy. If the Ashanti region does well, Ghana will naturally do well. And if Ghana does well, it inures to the benefit of whichever government is in power. So when you are going to do an investment like that, you consider the benefits to those living in the region first and foremost, and the overall benefit to the country, and make the investment, so that you don't make the decision purely based on the fact that you get a certain number of votes. If we did
you've spoken like a true politician.
No. It is about lives. Bottom line, it's about lives.
I don't dispute that, but the point is, in fact, for Ashanti region, as they say, you don't preach to the converted. So you're going to put it there, as you say, if you're making politically, because you believe if you can break into your opponent's stronghold.
I can assure that is not the reason why we did investments within the Ashanti region.
But you can also say it's not part of the
No. Evans, we need to be clear. If you have a region of such strategic importance economically as the Ashanti region, and you underinvest there simply because you don't get a certain number of votes, you will be shooting yourself in the foot. Because when that region does well economically, it has a certain rippling effect on the performance of the economy generally. And if the economy does well and you are in government, you stand to reap the benefits, because people then would appreciate the work that you are doing. So if you go and formulate policy which deliberately starves a particular region of development, despite its strategic importance to national development and economic growth, then you are shooting yourself in the foot. So when we make investments, at least we on the side of the NDC do not do so on the basis of political consideration. We think that every region should get its adequate share. I mean, recently there's been talk about an airport in Cape Coast. But under the Fourth Republic, Everybody.
Which is your region?
Yes, my region.
Where you come
it's just a border. It's just a border with Abrasibu Kamankese.
Yeah.
At least when you go after the.
So you must applaud the MPP for doing that.
No, I actually have relatives who live in Cape Coast too. So I go there a lot. I'm aware that there are sentiments for and agitations for the siting of an airport. I believe really that promise in the NDC manifesto was knee-jerk, because a day or so before the manifesto, the president was clear.
Yeah, that was a controversial bit.
Yeah, the president was clear that some studies would have to be, and I agree with the president's position. It was a right position, except that he lacked the courage to stick to it when he came under pressure. But the point that I was going to make is that if you go to the central region, for instance, Kotokraba was a trading hub. By the way, my maternal grandmother used to sell in that market. So it has some strategic importance for the region's economy, yet it was dilapidated. So a decision was made to put an ultra-modern market there to transform the economic landscape. There had been a clamor for a stadium in Cape Coast as well. The NDC did it, among other provisions that we made in terms of infrastructure, in terms of roads and water and what have you. So you do that. You go to the western region. We had developed oil and gas. So we needed to make an investment in gas infrastructure in order to tap it. So we put it at Etuabo in the western region because it has significant economic importance. So these decisions are made on the basis of the impact on the people living there, its importance to the overall survival of our country.
I need to ask you still about Greater Accra. Sure. You succumbed to the MPP in the 2016 elections, winning 13 of the 13 seats. NDC MPP took 21. I'm pretty sure the objective is to overturn this. Sure. Right? I mean, but if you look at, of course, I mean, if you look at analysis, some of the swing constituencies, the NDP won pretty marginally, so still able to overturn it. If you look at Lejokuku, which was a very interesting case of skirt and blouse, sure. You won the presidential, they won the parliamentary, still an area willing to swing if you work hard. You believe, in all honesty, that you've done enough to woo the people of Greater Accra?
Absolutely.
To vote for you?
The point is that...
And what's the evidence to suggest that you have?
First of all, the reason why the Greater Accra region is important is because of its cosmopolitan nature. Yeah. That it provides you with a mixed bag of the national demographic. So you will find every part of Ghana represented here. Indeed, I believe it is yet to be scientifically proven that the reason why the numbers went up in Greater Accra is that not many people got out of the region to go to their home regions to register. So if essentially roughly the same number of people that existed on the old register are on the new register, then you ought to factor in, if you discount the number of people who may have died from the figures, you find that it is entirely possible that the reason why the numbers have swelled is that people did not travel to their home regions to register.
Because of COVID?
Well, COVID, maybe economic conditions, or they just felt that, well, I mean, as they say in Accra, baby, you know, so you can register here and make impact. Or that the parties strategically decided that it is not necessary to go back to, say, the Volta region or the Ashanti region to register, because it will not make significant impact in terms of the outcome of the elections. That if you voted in the Greater Accra region for a presidential candidate, you are still going to win anyway. You don't need that additional number to vote to make a parliamentary candidate victorious. So that is there. Therefore, when the numbers come to play and you see that you need to do A, B, C, D to win that particular region, you evolve strategy to do so. Now, the thing with the Greater Accra region is that because it is cosmopolitan in nature, you look at literacy rates, people's ability to appreciate the issues. You have a sizable proportion of middle class people living here and all that. It is important because it becomes a battleground. Now, you have a government that promised heaven and has essentially delivered hell. People are going to assess them by the promises that they made in relation to what they have delivered. That, for me, is the first and foremost point in decision-making in elections. When the NDC has come to you and said that I will do ABCD in a manifesto, and the time comes after 4 years to make a decision on whether to retain them or get another party, you look at their performance. These are what they promised you. Secondly, you look at the competing narratives, what the major parties are offering. So yesterday we launched our manifesto, 2 weeks or so earlier, the NPP had launched this. You in the media have done a good job of analyzing both sets of manifestos. Now, the public follows the discussions. And when they follow the discussions, they see that the NDC is talking about free primary health care. But there's no significant policy offering on the side of the MPP. And you live in Greater Accra region, and accessing healthcare is a problem for you. You will make a decision either way.
Yeah, but
especially if the incumbents...
But yours is a promise. And one of the things I want to do after the break is to now begin to go into a few of the specifics. We're going to isolate just 2 key areas. The airport in the Upper East, we'll talk about a 10 billion big push also, because Felix speaks to infrastructure. And then we'll also briefly hear from Dr. Asasante on this political question, the manifestos and the politics of it all. And then we'll get to spend some time talking about interrogating some of the specifics. As I said, if you want the detailed critique of the manifesto, join us on Manifesto Tracker tomorrow. Stay with me. After we return, 2 issues to go into specifics. Dr. Asasante will join me with his thoughts on the politics of manifesto. Stay with me. So we'll start with that. And thanks for staying with us. This is the PM Express, looking not so much at the specifics of the manifesto, just looking at the politics of it, because there's a level of interesting things to look at with the politics of the manifesto. One of them, and I kept asking the question yesterday, where do you draw the line between being populist in drafting manifesto promises and actually crafting messages that address people's real needs? That is a line that NDC was trying to draw yesterday. Did they succeed in doing that? Let's bring up one of those promises that straddles that line, because there have been a lot of sentiments for that. Just like the Cape Coast one, the Upper East Regional Airport case. Felix Kwachifosu still with me, former Deputy Communications Minister works in the office of the former president, flag bearer of the NDC himself, is a candidate in the Central region. But Felix, another airport in the Upper East region. Question that comes up automatically is, where is a feasibility study that says that this is a viable investment to make in the Upper East region? Well,
I mean, it would be a bit out of place to demand feasibility studies from an opposition party.
First of all, this is not opposition. This is a party that was in power for 4 years.
That is true. But
John Mahama says he bought the land.
That is true.
So you bought the land without a feasibility study.
The Ghana Airport Company itself has a long-term strategy. Indeed, they have a policy, a standing policy, of developing airports in regional capitals. But before the decision is made, some analysis would have to be conducted in terms of the viability of the project at a particular point. I believe that a time will come when all regional capitals will have airports, and they may have other facilities that now may seem like pipe dreams or building castles in the air. So when a specific decision is made at a point to do a particular project, sufficient focus is brought to bear on it, and then the right justification is found. So let's go to the Upper East Regional Hospital. Airport proposed. Now, what are the merits that may drive such a decision? To begin with, people in that region, without question, come to Accra, Kumasi, and other major cities to transact business and for other purposes. Now, we are talking of a distance of over 800 kilometers between the Upper East region, the capital Bogatanga, and Accra. 800 kilometers.
Okay.
If you travel by road, you will spend not less than 12 hours on it. In fact, half a day.
But you can simply go to Tamale and drive 2 hours.
I'm coming. Even that is 2 hours.
Yeah.
Again, if you add the fact that you will go by air from Accra to Kumasi, which is roughly another hour if you consider the turnaround time, the time that you get into the plane, disembark, get your luggage, and move from the airport, that would be almost an hour gone. Add it, that is 3 hours. However, if you give somebody an option of doing a direct flight from the Upper East Regional Capital Bogatanga to Accra, and it takes, say, 1 hour or even 1.5 hours to do so, I'm sure that there are many people who will take that option.
Yeah, but how many exactly?
No, but the distance, first of all, the question to ask is that, do people move from the Upper East region to the Greater Accra region or the Ashanti region or the central region. Or they do.
Keep question being asked on a manifesto tracker is, what problem are you trying to solve? Where's the problem?
The problem is that you are trying to connect your cities so that people can move freely.
Yeah, but people have been moving freely.
Yes, but there are
from Accra to Tamale.
But there are huge constraints.
Tamale, well, where's the constraint?
Evans, I don't know whether you've used that road before. I have done it in recent times. It is not a small journey. It is not.
This is 2 hours from Tamale to Bolga.
If you are moving from Tamale to the Upper East, Tamale to Bolga, and the time involved is 2 hours.
Yeah.
You would have taken a flight that lasts roughly 1.5 hours.
Well, yeah,
so you are talking roughly 3 hours. But if you can cut this in half and move directly from the Upper East region to the Greater Accra region in 1.5 hours, I'm sure that
I come back to my original question.
There are many people who
you were in power for 4 years.
Yes.
Your flag bearer said yesterday that you bought the land.
Yes.
You acquired the land before you left office. What feasibility study informed that?
But I'm saying that it is a process.
So you don't have a feasibility study, yet you bought the land. I mean, that question needs to be answered.
Evans, I have thought that there's a standing policy by the Ghana Airport Company under the auspices of the Transport Ministry, or now Aviation Ministry, to develop a regional airport in each of our regions. And I have said that a time will come when all regions will have that kind of facility among others. But at every point in time, you execute 1 or 2 based on specific considerations. I am saying that from where we sit as the NDC, we think that the distance between Accra and that part of the country justifies air travel.
That?
Not just that. In addition to that, this is a border region.
But you know the question that raises, when you say that, you have to quantify that.
So
what is the traffic volumes you expect? But you haven't done that.
Allow me to land. In addition to that, this is a border region. It means that people from our northern neighbor, Burkina Faso, can go through there and get to Accra. At the moment, I believe that you have to board a flight from Accra to Ouagadougou if you want to do so. But there may be people living close to the border who may want to get into Ghana quickly for a transaction and may find that a 1.5 hour journey from Bolga to Accra is much cheaper and quicker than one directly from Accra to another part of Burkina Faso. In addition to that, there are also security considerations for a border region. You need to possess the capability to deploy quickly if there is an emergency. So it is not just economic considerations that inform the decision to cite a particular infrastructure. There are also security considerations.
Yeah, but so, you remember that you're
on all counts, I believe that there is sufficient justification for this.
But that is a problem with this particular promise.
Sure.
You said that yesterday, John Mama said this is about comparing track records.
Sure.
For a party that was in power for 4 years, you cannot make a promise like this. Same as the MPP when they said they will build Cape Coast, without, and especially when you told that you bought land, and do guesswork.
Nobody's guessing. Is it?
No, but true. What you've done is not based on any empirical analysis done. But you made a promise you do it.
I've told you that from the word.
A lot of this is, we have to admit, this is conjecture.
No, it's not conjecture. From the word.
The analysis you've done, anybody can do the analysis.
But so can anybody who takes a feasibility.
Anybody can promise to be on airport without feasibility. But what distinguishes a party?
We are talking about a party. We are talking about a party.
It's to show that we did more work.
We are talking about a party that has a solid track record in the provision of aviation infrastructure.
But you built the same airport, a similar airport in Volta region.
Yeah, it is there.
Which has become a white elephant.
Because the government of the day has simply not operationalized it. We would have done so.
Because it's not viable.
Again.
Why should we trust you to say you build an airport in Upper East again without a feasibility study when you've done one in Volta region, which currently is not being used?
But I'm saying that the decision not to use that airport cannot be attributed to the NDC.
No flight is willing to fly to Volta region. It's not commercially viable.
The decision not to open that airport is one that must be made.
Open it to what? Is the question.
No, but
open it. Which flight will fly to Volta region?
Evans, if you hear me out, there is an airport. It is the duty of a certain authority to make that airport available to people who want to use it. The point we are making here is that when making such a decision, considerations come to play. In the specific case of the Upper East region, we see that to the extent that there is traffic between Accra and the Upper East region, and it's a very long distance, there is justification for air travel, which is quicker and may even be cheaper. Because if you spend 12 hours on the road, apart from the greater risk you are exposed to, I'm sure that it consumes a lot of fuel. In addition to that, you are going to get extremely tired because of the length of the journey. There's also the case that you've made that, there's another option. Go to Tamale and fly to the Upper East region. I'm saying that you have left out the fact that you would have to get to Tamale from Accra if you are traveling from Accra. When you add that, you are getting to close to 4 hours of travel.
3 hours.
Yes, but that may be too long for somebody who wants to get there quickly. When you come to Cape Coast, the question you need to ask is that, are there alternatives that make it possible for rapid travel between Accra and Cape Coast? Yes.
Which is what?
At the moment, if you take out traffic, within 2 hours, you'll be able to get to Cape Coast from Accra. Now, it's a single lane road, okay? Once you dualize it, as we have promised to do, it is going to cut the journey by a significant amount of time. So if you can get to Cape Coast in, say, an hour, then what is the point in air travel, which may even take the same amount of time?
The verdict from the experts on both is that both isn't economically viable.
We disagree with that. I made a point. I was making the point
as much as the MPP lacks a feasibility and a financial viability study, you also do.
Evans, no.
So both of you start from the same premise of not having done thorough job of analysis on this.
Evans, you have made the point that when in power, we bought land.
Yes.
That shows you that we had done some work.
Isn't that more problematic?
Evans, no.
When you actually invest money in buying land without knowing if it's feasible.
No. Evans,
that is actually tilting the brink of financial loss.
That is not it. Do you know when the Akosomo Dam site was discovered? It was discovered in 1915 by a British geologist. It took at least 45 years for a dam to be eventually put there. So there's nothing wrong with making preparation for future deployment. If today there's land in Cape Coast earmarked for an airport, there will be no problem with it.
Okay.
But it's just that it will take some time to get the right systems and processes in place to deliver the airport. And I am confident that the time will come when there will be an airport in every region.
I see.
It is, in my view,
viable or not?
Viable, because we need to interconnect our country.
Link to the economy.
Exactly, we need to link our country.
Felix, stay with me. I want to quickly give a final word to well, Dr. Sisson was supposed to join us. You don't have him, but let me wrap up with you on the 10 billion. We just have two minutes to wrap up. Tomorrow we'll do a more thorough job on this 10 billion thing because it's a big one. You're going to spend a lot of money. The question had come about, where are you raising the funds? If you can bullet it for me, I'll be grateful.
Yeah, because
of time. Bullet it for me. Where are you getting the money?
President Mama made it very clear the very first day he broached the subject of the big push that we are going to use options that do not increase our public debt. In other words, we'll use financing models that don't add to our public debt. And there are examples of that. I spoke to you earlier today about Terminal 3. It is a Ghana airport company that used its balance sheet to obtain a loan of over $300 million to do that terminal and other projects. They were able to do that because government took a decision that rather than take part of their IGF, let them retain all of it to build their books. And that is how come they were able to get
so that's a broad strategy.
So
one of the key areas.
Mr. Setekwa used to call it smart borrowing. Again, when we wanted to expand the Tema Port, we entered into a concession arrangement with a developer, a notable shipping line called MPS, who had other partners. So they partnered the GPHA to deliver, and that's $1 billion project. When we wanted to do a Twabo, we used oil. What happened was that we got $1 billion from China. Ordinarily, it should add to our public debt. But we found a financing option by guaranteeing them repayment with oil. So what happened is that a subsidiary of Sinopec, the company that did the construction, was given the first right of purchase of a certain amount of oil. They bought it at the prevailing world market price. So if they buy it, they then escrow the account, the money, and take out the portion that must be used to defray that part of debt. So,
it does.
And then I'm married.
In all cases.
And then I'm married. I'm married was a BOT lasting 5 years. If the MPP had not extended it, next year we should have owned that plant. We will pay $1. And these are multi-million-dollar projects, huge projects.
But the other point to make is that the 10 billion also go into social interventions, which necessarily don't bring back
Evans,
the same amount
of profit. You do not have a choice as a government. Sometimes
to spend it, what are you going to get about?
Sometimes you have to incur Felix, in order to provide.
I'm grateful that you joined me. Very interesting conversation. More tomorrow as we begin to break this down even more. Stay with me and join us tomorrow for that.